A bullet found on the roof not associated with Tyler Robinson. A witness who said it was a bald guy and others driving Robinson's car. And there were 3 different DNA profiles on certain pieces of evidence. Did he act alone? Was this part of a wider conspiracy, or is this the defense strategy to muddy the waters, creating reasonable doubt and perhaps laying out their case to a wider audience? Are they hoping for a plea bargain? Take the death penalty off the table, and then we'll talk, just like what we saw in Brian Kohlberger. Or can all these discrepancies be explained away by prosecutors? Well, here are my key takeaways. First, welcome to Lunchtime Law. If you're new here, I'm Margaret McLean, a former prosecutor, civil trial lawyer, and law professor. And this is where we translate what's actually happening inside the courtroom. So please press the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And stay to the end because I'll be discussing the Larry Millete trial and closing arguments, which is going on in California. And believe me, I am scratching my head on that one. It's a real circumstantial case, no body, no crime scene, no M weapon, and we even have evidence of hemlock poisoning and spellcasters. So it is a bizarre case coming out of California. I am really wondering, what will the jury do there? They've got a lot of dots to connect in order to get a conviction. And they have all different choices on the conviction as well. So tonight, also, be sure to catch my live show at 7 o'clock with legendary Susan Smith prosecutor Tommy Pope. And we'll be discussing the Lindsay Clancy case, which is going on in Massachusetts. The trial will be held in about 2 weeks. And in both cases, it's so sad. Mothers took the lives of their children. And the Clancy case is very unique. There are so many gray areas with mental illness in that one. So please tune in at 7 o'clock and put your notifications on. Well, back to the Tyler Robinson hearing. This case, it really fascinates me on so many levels. Robinson is facing aggravated M charges in the fatal assassination-style shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk last September. You know, Kirk would go around to colleges and debate students on all sorts of controversial issues, right? So whether you liked him or not, he was exercising his free speech. But I want to really talk motive in this case. So prosecutors, they just dropped a bombshell on motive. They told the judge that Robinson targeted Charlie Kirk because of Kirk's Orthodox Christian views on gender ideology and sexuality, stating that the suspect, Robinson, was vehemently on the other side of those views, quote unquote, on that one, especially when it came to his views about transgender people. Robinson believed that Kirk was spreading hate. So this is a massive development because the state is seeking the death penalty, and establishing this kind of targeted ideological motive is exactly how they plan to secure it. So Robinson's roommate and lover was in the process of transitioning from male to female. We will be seeing text messages between the two as well. Now, Robinson truly believed, now this is in my opinion, based on what I've seen so far, that Charlie Kirk had to go. And as a result, he stopped him. He killed cold-blooded M. So welcome everybody to the show. Thank you for watching. I have some viewers out there, which is always a good thing, right? But this case, man, graphic campus surveillance footage is also hitting the record as well. Prosecutors just unveiled new videos, and I've got a little screen here as well. So I'm going to put that up, you know, me and my screen slideshows, I should say. It's the professor and me. So here we go, my slideshow. There we go. Of course, there's Charlie Kirk exercising his right to freedom of speech, whether you like him or not. And here are some of the surveillance, and there's quite a bit that came out in yesterday. So let's talk about that. Basically, prosecutors unveiled a bunch of videos that trace the movements of Robinson across the campus of Utah Valley University in the hours surrounding the assassination. So on the night of September 10th, a gray Dodge Challenger, which is Robinson's car, rolled up to a stoplight at the edge of the campus, less than a half mile from the crime scene. And I didn't know this, but Robinson also approached members of Turning Point USA, the conservative group founded by Charlie Kirk, hours before the shooting. He also had brief encounters with police before and after Kirk was killed. I mean, I'd like to hear the testimony from those people at Turning Point who ran into him and the officers. What's it like coming face to face with an alleged killer before the act occurs? I mean, I'd be thinking about that the rest of my life, and thinking, I'd almost be double thinking about what, could I have stopped him? Even though, no, you couldn't have. So, new surveillance video played in court on Tuesday, that would be yesterday, showed the driver of the car trying to turn right onto campus, but the vehicle pulled away after a police officer briefly spoke with the person at the wheel. And Sergeant, who was it? David Hall, the lead investigator, testified that the local police officer handling traffic control for the event spoke with Robinson and even jotted down his license plate number because he had a quote unquote cop intuition. Again, I wonder how this guy feels right now. I mean, that's all he could have done at this point. He shouldn't feel guilty. I'm sure there were a lot of people who may have come across the suspect that day. Or actually, there was probably a lot of people besides Tyler Robinson who might have come across a little bit, weird or suspect. So, we're going to a controversial talk, as someone would say. So there was a lot of security at that event and at all of Charlie Kirk's events. So at that point, moving on, in the morning, Robinson really looked like your typical college student. He's dressed in gray shorts, a red t-shirt. He's young. I think he was 22 at the time. I know he's 23 now. I don't know when his birthday was. He pulled into a parking garage at UVU at 8:30 in the morning on September 10th, and he carried a backpack draped over his shoulders and crisscrossed the campus. And he even stopped for lunch at a Chick-fil-A. And this guy is planning to off somebody, right? He's planning to off somebody, and he goes to lunch at a Chick-fil-A. I mean, I don't know. It's something's wrong with this guy. So prosecutors claim that this was all part of the plan to appear innocuous, concealing a plan to kill. And as a prosecutor, that makes sense to me. He walked to the amphitheater where the event would be taking place, and that's where he made contact with representatives from Turning Point USA. I wonder what he said to them. I wonder if we're going to find out. I'm sure we would if this case goes to trial, if there's no plea deal on the table, which he would take. I'd like to know what they're thinking, what he looked like. Was he nervous? All that. And I think the fact that they remembered Robinson is interesting too, because what made him stand out? Why did he remember this? Why did they remember this guy? So Robinson drove away from the campus around 9:25 a.m. and then he returned on foot wearing jeans and a long-sleeved black t-shirt. And he walked with a noticeable limp. That's eerie as well. Let's see. I don't have the video up of that, but he goes back to this campus and you can tell he's walking stiff-legged with, why does he have a noticeable limp? Well, because according to investigators, they believe he had a rifle stuck up his pants leg. And the change of clothes is good for the prosecution because it shows planning and it shows premeditation and they'll sell the idea to the jury ultimately that this guy was kind of in disguise, so trying to fit in. Black t-shirt, trying to, again, with a hoodie, I believe, trying to disguise, right? So then there was, again, there was this chilling video capturing a figure. Investigators say it was Robinson running across the gravel-covered roof of a campus building. And I've got that as well. Well, I don't have the video, but this is part of the video where he was running across that roof. And then it shows him ultimately lying down in a sniper position moments before the shooting. You know, I think this is so hard for victims and victims' families. Well, obviously, it's really hard for Charlie Kirk, the victim, because Charlie had no idea what was coming next. This is just so hard for the family to hear. Somebody's last few moments on earth. What was he thinking about, right? And then one shot rang out and echoed across the campus. One lone rifle shot. That's all it took. After that, the eerie figure scurried to the opposite side of the roof, carrying what appeared to be a long object, jumped off into the grass, and slipped away into a wooded area. When police recovered the bolt action rifle in those woods, it contained exactly one spent casing, and that's crucial evidence. Ultimately, a jury would be all over that one. Done and dusted, as I would say, done and dusted. And then there's more, okay? On top of that, new DNA, new DNA evidence that came out was, I thought, very interesting. So Robinson's DNA was found on a towel that was wrapped around that very rifle found in the woods. And his DNA was also discovered on that screwdriver that was found near the sniper pad in the exact location where he allegedly fired. I keep wondering, what was he using that screwdriver for? I wonder if we'll ever find out. So far, it hasn't come out. And this is also new. As I mentioned before, they found 3 different DNA profiles on that screwdriver and the towel. One is Robinson's, which is good because it connects him. Then the other belongs to Lance Twiggs, Robinson's roommate, who I spoke of, and his romantic partner. And the other one, who knows, right? And it makes sense to me that Twig's DNA could be innocently found on that towel. The police did clear him and he was cooperating with the police. So I don't think he's in on it. Maybe some people think he was. According to police, they don't think so. But who's this third person? Of course, that's the good fodder for the conspiracy theorists and, of course, for the defense. So let's see what I have over here in my comments. My comments are way over here. So, hi. Oh, wow. Hi from Brazil. Thank you for watching from Brazil. Um, I really enjoy meeting people through this show, and especially from all over the world. So thank you so much for joining me. And I feel free to answer. I look at my thing is over there, my chat, so I can really try to answer as many questions as I can. So, I'm happy to do that. And I also want to point out here that the burden of proof is extraordinarily low here. The state only has to show probable cause in this hearing, meaning reasonable grounds exist to believe Robinson committed the crime. And in my opinion, that threshold is so low that the state's chances of failing to advance this case to trial is less than 1%. So the prosecution has already won as far as I'm concerned. I think they've already convinced the judge. But keep in mind, this is a multi-day preliminary hearing, and it allows the prosecution to put their key witnesses on the stand early. Putting them on the stand is good for the prosecution. It locks in their testimony just in case a witness becomes unavailable. However, the defense, and I think the defense attorney, I think she's objecting too much, but her cross-examination is pretty good. And she's engaging in some vigorous cross-examination here. What's she doing? She's locking the witnesses in, right? In other words, they better not be changing their stories later on, or Catherine Nestor, she's the defense attorney, will fillet them. She will get a sharp knife and just fillet them on the stand. So, and I also think that at this stage, the cross-examination is likely exploratory. So she's defining the weaknesses in the state's case and determining what may work best later in front of a jury. And again, she's also trying this case before the media to what I said is a wider audience. And, it works. So, any more questions on this case? Let's see what else I have here. Oh, yeah, this is more of the surveillance footage. I mean, I think that the prosecution is really doing its job connecting the dots here. This I actually think this hearing should be moving much faster. When I was a prosecutor, these probably, I did do some probable cause hearings. I practiced in Massachusetts. We tended to take big cases like this in front of the grand jury, but in Utah, they do things differently. So you will see preliminary hearings like this. Boom, boom, boom. It should be done. I do think that they spent quite a bit of time with objections. But I do think it's very interesting to watch. And new stuff is coming out every day on this case, which really fascinates me as a prosecutor. But let's see. Anything else on this case? So I'm going to move on to the Larry Millete case coming out of California, which this case really blows my mind. And if you don't know anything about it, so there are no cameras in the courtroom. Therefore, people may not be following this case. I know that it's a big deal out in California. The news stations are covering it. But as far as YouTube, there aren't too many people covering it all. So I'd like to cover it and tell you guys what I think from a prosecutor's perspective. But if you don't know anything about the case, let me put the picture of the poor victim up. And this is, that's more of the surveillance that I forgot to show you. That's him in the parking lot. This is it. So this is the victim, Maya, and her husband, Larry, obviously in better times. She's so beautiful. So this case focuses on the January 2021 disappearance of Maya Millete. She was 39 years old at the time, mother of 3, who vanished from her Chula Vista, California home. She was last seen like I said, on January 7th. The state argues that she was offed. Yeah, I'm not supposed to say the M word, so I've tried to think of something else. The following day, right after she contacted a divorce lawyer. So they weren't getting along in their marriage, and this poor woman, mother's body was never found. Okay. I think the prosecution has a tough uphill battle. They're lacking a body, they're lacking a weapon, no crime scene. It is a real circumstantial case here. So they're trying to connect the dots, and they're pointing to Larry, the husband's extreme obsession with keeping Maya from leaving, including paying thousands of dollars, get this one, to online spellcasters. Yeah, spellcasters. That means somebody casting a spell, like a witch's spell, to bind her to the marriage and to make her incapacitated. So he's really believing in all that stuff. And they do have that stuff online. You might believe in it or you might think it's a scam. I don't know. I personally don't believe in it, but they had people casting spells for centuries and centuries and centuries. So I don't know. They also point to a 12-hour gap where the husband, Larry, turned off his phone and vanished in the family vehicle the morning after his wife went missing. The defense argues there is absolutely no physical or forensic evidence proving a crime was committed, let alone that Larry was involved, and maintains that Maya left home on her own accord and perhaps maybe she's still out there someplace in hiding. So, Deputy District Attorney Christy Bowles just wrapped up a highly emotional closing argument for the prosecution. Her message to the jury was simple but devastating. And I'll quote some of it for you since, again, you can't watch it on TV. Quote, Maya was a human being. Maya Millete could not, and did not leave her children, Bowles said. To think that she left her 3 children that she spent her life concerned about is unreasonable, unfathomable, and it's impossible. So she walked the jury through the reality that Maya was a mother who loved her 3 children and was actively planning to leave her husband. You know, she tried to convince the jury, this woman, this mother, this beautiful woman would never just walk away. And she also pointed to the surveillance video taken the morning after Maya disappeared, where Larry was backing his SUV almost entirely inside the garage for several minutes. And there was audio that the prosecutor told the jury you could hear a distinct sound of something heavy being dragged. I'm sure the defense will say that could be anything. So is that something that the jury will sink their teeth into? I don't know. So here's more of that closing argument. Quote, the prosecutor says, Maya is just telling him, we are done. I want a life without you. And he will have none of it. So that's what the prosecutor is arguing. She also argued that there were hundreds of pieces of individual evidence combined to tell one story, that Larry Millete is guilty. He exhibited every symptom of being an abuser who used coercive control against his wife. And when that failed, he desperately turned to the online spellcasters to save his failing marriage. Now, this is the first time I've heard of that in a trial. The messages turned darker, the messages to the spellcasters, when Maya firmly set her mind that I'm done. I'm done with this marriage. I need a divorce. And that's when Larry asked the spellcasters for Maya to be injured, sickened, and even punished. Okay. Quote again, we know exactly what he wants, make her suffer. He is willing for her to be so injured that she will have to depend on him. That's what he wants, pain, suffering, and injury. He is capable of wanting her dead because he cannot fathom a life without her. And that's, again, a direct quote from the prosecutor. Bowles also said that Larry spent months researching the deadly neurotoxin derived from the poison hemlock plant. I told you there would be poison hemlock. It sounds like witchcraft again, right? It was found in a vial inside the home, hemlock. The prosecutor said that all evidence points to Larry's guilt and not the defense theory that Maya secretly left home and left her children behind and her whole life behind. So the prosecutor is trying to say what the defense will be arguing to you doesn't make sense at all. And by the way, in California, I noticed a difference. So the prosecution always has the burden of proof. And here in Massachusetts, the prosecution always has the last word and they go last. But in California, it's reversed. So the prosecution went first. And today, the defense will be making their closing arguments in the case. So I will be talking about that tomorrow on Lunchtime Law. And I'll be quoting from that because there's no cameras in the courtroom. I wish there were in this case because I find it fascinating. So another quote, the only reasonable conclusion is that Maya Millete is deceased. She wasn't planning a great escape. So in a fiery finish, Bowles showed multiple photos of Maya with her 3 children, telling jurors that the mother was taken away from the people that she loved more than anything else in the world. And that's something that prosecutors want to drive home to jurors, is showing these big photographs or slide presentation of a loving mother with her beautiful children. And of course, those poor children no longer have a mother. That mother was taken away, if you're to believe the prosecution's side of the case. And again, another quote, you now have all the pieces you need. You don't need a body to know what happened. Quote, May Millete is dead, and the defendant is the one who killed her. He is guilty, she said. The evidence is overwhelming. Hold him accountable and find him guilty of first degree M. So that closing argument took 3 hours, and it sounds like it was very emotional and it was probably very impactful to that jury. So we shall see what the defense says, and I'm sure I can predict it. Poking holes in the case, no body, no crime scene. So can they prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt? And what's up next? Well, going back to Tyler Robinson and the Charlie Kirk case, the state is expected to introduce a recorded interview with Robinson's former roommate and romantic partner, Lance Twiggs. While Twiggs isn't testifying live in this hearing, they'll use his taped words to introduce a chilling note that Robinson allegedly left behind. And the note allegedly read, quote, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. Those are very strong words in favor of the prosecution's case. We also expect to hear about the text for Robinson that Robinson sent saying he was sick of Kirk's hatred. I mean, motive, motive, motive. So overall, this preliminary hearing really gives the Utah prosecutors a massive strategic playbook, and we're seeing it play out step by step. So I will be following this case. And don't forget, tonight I'm going to be talking about Lindsay Clancy. It's coming up for trial. That case is very emotional for me because I'm the mother of 3 young children, and it talks about, it will really examine postpartum depression. So tonight I'm going to play some of the clips from the prosecution's strongest arguments and from defense attorney Kevin Reddington. And it'll be really interesting to see what the former prosecutor, Larry, Pope will have to say from the Susan Smith case. So it'll be interesting to see. I wonder if we're going to have a debate, but tune in, put your notifications on. I'll be back on live at 7:00. And again, thank you everyone for joining me on Lunchtime Live. I'll be here every day, well, weekdays, not weekends. And if you can't catch me live, then definitely check it out another time of the day. But once again, thank you very much. And I will see you tonight at 7 and tomorrow again at noon.